he wearing a cape? Who wears a cape? Where do you even get a cape?
You're right. It is strange. In fact, let's cross to the other side of the street. Cover me.
In 1996, Seinfeld was the #1 show in America. Not #1 comedy, #1 show of anything on television. 22 million people were watching every week. The finale 2 years later would pull 76 million viewers, which was more than the Super Bowl. And in the middle of all of that, Larry David quit. Not fired, but he walked away from the most successful sitcom in television history at its creative peak because he decided he was done. And almost nobody understood why. To understand what Larry David gave up, you have to understand what 1996 actually meant for him specifically. He wasn't just the co-creator in name, he was the architect, while Seinfeld himself was the face of the show. David's role was to run it from behind the scenes.
That was a total bullshit story about the bladder.
A medical condition.
You got a medical condition. She's got a medical condition. I was in the middle of the entire trip because of you.
Serving as head writer and showrunner throughout the show's golden era. Every episode went through him. The tone, the structure, and the enforcement of the no hugging, no learning rule that kept the show from becoming every other sitcom on television. George was based almost entirely on Larry David's own life, personality, and worst moments. He'd won an Emmy for writing The Contest, the episode where 4 characters bet on who can go the longest without self-gratification, which NBC executives famously didn't understand was about until the table read. David later said he never even mentioned the idea to Jerry for years because he didn't think there was any way the show could get it done on the network. He was ready to quit if NBC said no. They actually loved it though. By 1996, he was rich, genuinely life-changingly rich. The syndication money alone was enormous. He had creative control, the respect of every writer in Hollywood, and a show that was getting better every season. When Larry David sat down with Charlie Rose in 1998 to talk about leaving, he was characteristically direct and evasive at the same time. When asked if he was burned out, he insisted he wasn't. He actually said that he had plenty of ideas. He just felt that his period was over. That's pretty much it. 7 years.
Is that new? Huh? What is all that?
Oh, it's kind of personal.
Then why didn't you put it on your ass?
Running the most important show on television, walking away at its peak, and the explanation is I wanted to try something else. Most people heard that and assumed he was hiding something. A falling out with Jerry, creative exhaustion, ego, because that explanation sounds too simple for a decision that large. But the more you know about Larry David's career before Seinfeld, the more that explanation makes perfect sense, because this wasn't the first time he'd done this exact thing. Here's what most people don't know about Larry David. He has been quitting things his entire career, walking away, saying he's done when the room expected him to say, and the pattern goes all the way back to before anyone knew his name. In the late 1970s, he was doing stand-up in New York clubs. He would frequently harangue audience members for speaking during his act, or simply walk off stage if he felt like their attention was not fixated on him. Like literally. Now for a comedian with no money and no reputation, that is an insane way to behave. It didn't make him more famous. It made him notorious in a specific way, as someone difficult and unpredictable. Then came Saturday Night Live in 1984. One night before the show, another sketch of his was cut. At 11:25 p.m., 5 minutes before air, he walked out to producer Dick and said that this fucking show stinks, and he walked out in the freezing cold with no coat, just walking home. Then halfway home, he started computing how much money he'd just cost himself. He went back 2 days later on a Monday and acted like nothing had happened, like the resignation had never even occurred. And it somehow worked because nobody stopped him. His neighbor Kenny Kramer suggested the move, and that story became the Seinfeld episode where George quits his job in a fit of rage and then shows up the next day pretending it didn't happen. This is the pattern. Larry David hits a wall and he decides he's done. He says so in a way that should end things, and then either he comes back or, in the case of Seinfeld, he doesn't.
And I walked up and I said, I'm done, I've had it, take your show, shove it. So I walked in on Monday and they were looking at me going, what the hell are you doing here?
Now the stand-up walk-offs, the SNL quit, the Seinfeld departure, all of it traces back to the same thing. Larry David has never been motivated by approval, not from audiences or from network executives. Jason Alexander talked about this in a 2018 interview and said that he always saw the doing of Seinfeld as a very stressful thing, and that detail is crucial. The show being successful didn't relax Larry David, it made him more anxious, because the more successful it became, the higher the standard he'd set for himself, and the more pressure he felt to maintain something he'd built from nothing. Most showrunners would find that pressure energizing, a reason to stay or a legacy to protect, but Larry David found it exhausting, and when something exhausts him, he basically just leaves. Starting in season 2, Larry David would hit a breaking point where he said the most recent season he'd made might be his last. Jerry Seinfeld would talk him off the ledge.
I'm an orphan.
Orphan.
Yeah, an orphan.
You're a little too old to be an orphan.
No, if you don't have parents, you're an
Or
orphan.
you could be 70 and be an
You
orphan.
could be 100 and be an orphan.
Oh, you can't be 100 and be an orphan.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Little orphan Funkhauser.
Every time, until season 7, when Seinfeld essentially said, if that's what you want to do, you should probably just leave. And this time, Larry didn't come back from the freezing cold. But this is the part of the story that tells you everything about what leaving actually meant to him. He didn't rest, and he didn't disappear into a wealthy retirement. He made a movie. He wrote and directed the 1998 film Sour Grapes, about a friendship that falls apart after one man wins at slots with a quarter he borrowed from the other. But you see, it bombed. Larry David later made fun of the box office disaster in Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then in 1999, HBO approached him about a comedy special, a 1-hour mockumentary following Larry David playing a fictionalized version of himself as he prepared to come out of retirement for a stand-up special. They called it Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was supposed to be a one-off, a special, that blossomed into the long-running Curb Your Enthusiasm, which initially ran from 2000 to 2011 and picked back up again in 2017 following a hiatus. 12 seasons and 24 years.
Wolf's Glen Restaurant in Westwood.
A wolf's den is a habitat that provides wolves with
Oh, you
protection from weather
stupid
and
fucking
predators.
idiot!
One option I see, Carson City, Nevada.
Ah, shut up!
It was an improvised show where Larry David plays a version of himself stumbling through Los Angeles, unable to get through a single social interaction without turning it into a full-blown conflict. The thing he left Seinfeld to do turned out to be his greatest work, arguably more honest and more personal, and definitely more specifically himself than anything on Seinfeld ever was, because on Curb there was no network telling him what to cut, no writer's room to manage, and no standard to maintain except his own. He basically left the biggest show in television history and built something bigger. But it is worth being honest about what changed after Larry left Seinfeld. Critics continually faulted Seinfeld for dipping in quality after his departure. The grounded and dark humor of the earlier seasons were replaced with more wacky antics and less cohesive storylines in the final seasons. Nobody felt the impact of his absence more than Jason Alexander. David understood George's quirks better than anyone else, and Alexander felt that the best of George exited with David.
Open it up.
Step in the asshole.
Spray paint, Larry was
what's
here. Leave garbage, Snickers, eat Snickers, leave garbage.
Get in that ass, Larry.
Don't worry. Hope you don't get me killed.
The show didn't collapse because it ran 2 more seasons and finished as the most watched finale in television history, but the thing that made it specifically great, that was gone. What replaced it was fine, but it was just different. And Larry David came back one final time to write the 2-part series finale, which is the most divisive episode in the show's history. Fans hate it. Critics were mixed. The characters got arrested for their selfishness, finally punished by the narrative in a way the show had spent 9 seasons refusing to do. Some people read that as Larry settling a score, a final statement. Whether that's true or not, it's completely consistent with the man who walked off stages in the 1970s, because the audience wasn't giving him what he wanted. Now here's the actual argument this video is making. Leaving Seinfeld wasn't self-sabotage. It was the most consistent thing Larry David ever did. From the stand-up walk-offs to the SNL quit to the Seinfeld departure, the logic is identical every time. Larry David operates on a very simple internal rule. When the thing stops being worth the cost of doing it, stop doing it. Not when the money runs out, but when he decides. Most people never get to apply that rule because they can't afford to. The approval of the room is the thing keeping the lights on. You don't get to walk away just because you feel like it. Larry David got to that point earlier than almost anyone, and every single time he got there, he made the same choice. His own judgment over everyone else's expectations. That's not reckless, that's a consistent value system, applied every time at every cost, regardless of what the world expected him to do. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe, as I do plan on making more Larry David videos very soon.